Hi everyone, Pam Gregory astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first half of June and the new moon that we have coming up in Gemini on the 6th. Now, the energy has changed a lot since April, and many of you I know are feeling this. We have the total solar eclipse on the 8th, and then we have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on the 20th and 21st. And for many, many people, myself included, there were big shifts around those times, particularly the total solar eclipse. There was a shedding of ancestral karma, baggage, emotional baggage you've been carrying for a long time, a sense of woundedness. For many people, illnesses seem to fall away. Really, and it was all over social media as well. Many people I know were experiencing this. Now, if you haven't experienced that, don't worry, there's no competition here. We are all on our own timeline. But it's really encouraging to know that I believe we shifted to a different timeline in April for humanity that is much clearer, much lighter, much more focused, much more positive, and that's really exciting. So that's in play now, and that is actually reflected in what's happening with the energy lines as well. I had a wonderful conversation with geobiologist Rory Duff yesterday, which you can find on my channel. So the other energy change of note is that on the 25th of May, Jupiter, I'm filming this on the 21st of May, Jupiter moves in to Gemini from Taurus. That's really different energy. Taurus is fixed Earth, where we've had a lot of concern about natural resources and finances, etc. Gemini is very different. Jupiter spends 12 months reliably in each sign, so it will stay in Gemini until May next year. Go back 12 years, pretty much to the month, and see what was happening for you 12 years ago. If you see where Gemini as a sign falls in your chart as in your area of health or career or money or family, whatever it is, because that will help to remind you what was happening 12 years ago. You'll tend to get an echo, and usually Jupiter has an expansive, positive energy for us. So, and you'll get an echo. You know, whatever it was about last time, was it about some study or some business expansion? It's all about expansion. It can be travel. It can be you develop a much larger social network. It can be personal growth. You're studying a lot. It can be you get recognized and awarded in some way. It can be a lot of abundance coming to you. Whatever it was last time will tend to repeat in a similar way. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to the link below. And then you can get a 2-part video series, which you can watch forever to help you understand the meaning of these updates for you in your own chart and in your own life. This is not a birth chart analysis. These are teaching videos to help you find these points in your chart. So that is very significant. And that's really from 25th of May until May 2025, as I say. And as soon as Jupiter moves into Gemini, it instantly comes into a trine with Pluto, 120 degrees trine with Pluto at 1 degree of Aries, at 1 degree of Aquarius. And this is very positive because it's giving us an expansive future humanitarian vision. Which is very positive. It's a lot about freedom. It's a lot about human rights, truth, justice. We're going to see a lot more truth coming to light from this point on, going through the rest of this year. It's already started and it will keep on rolling. That's part of the collapse of the old and the birth of the new. Also on the 3rd, 4th of the month, we have Mercury coming together with Jupiter and again trine to Pluto. So this is helping us think big, think futuristically, think expansively, and think big. And Mercury trine to Pluto is always about the power of our words as well. It's about digging up secrets too. making sure that secrets come to light. And there's going to be, as I say, a lot of that. So now we're going to look, because the new moon happens quite early in the month. It happens on the 6th. So we're going to look at this chart now. I'm going to share my screen. And talk through this. So, as always, I've set this for England. It's where I live. And this is happening on the 6th, as I say, at 5:37 a.m. Pacific and 1:37 p.m. UK time on the clock. That's British summer time. Here it's showing universal time. So we have our new moon. Sun and moon are always together at a new moon at 16:17 of Gemini. See where 16:17 of Gemini falls in your chart. Don't forget to set a new intention at this time. It's the perfect time for you to plant a new seed for whatever you want to manifest in your life. And now I am always setting a new seed for new earth as well with each of these new moons. So quite a lot to say about this. It's very social. Gemini loves to connect with people. It's all about communication. It's all about chat. It's all about social media. Social media is going to be huge. We may well see more social media platforms coming online. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. It's very much the planet of our thinking, our mental constructs, and our mind. And Mercury, I sort of think of it like Puck in Shakespeare, if you're familiar with the character Puck. And Puck is the messenger, and that he takes little bits of snippets of information here, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there. So often people with a Gemini emphasis actually have very good general knowledge because they have a very broad spread of knowledge that doesn't necessarily go super deep, but it's across a wide variety of topics. I know several people actually who always win pub quizzes that I know because they have strong Gemini emphasis, but very much connected to wanting to connect on social media, but it's chat, it's conversation. And we actually here have 5 planets in total in, let me see, in Gemini, we have Jupiter, Mercury, Moon, Sun, and Venus. And we also have, of course, if we're thinking of air signs, Pluto in Aquarius. But this is mutable air. So this is calling on us to be very adaptable, to be flexible, to see things from other people's points of view, which Gemini is very good at. And what is beautiful about this is whatever new seed we are planting, we are doing it with love, because Venus is part of this picture too. So this is reflected in things like social media platforms like TikTok, little short snippets, X, which used to be Twitter, little short snippets of information. Gemini is particularly good at that, picking them up and then making them practical and accessible. But it is about our thinking patterns. And here it's suggesting, particularly with that important trine from Jupiter to Pluto, Pluto's about networks, mental networks, higher mind, rule. Mercury is related to lower mind. Uranus is related to higher mind. So Uranus is said to be the higher octave of Mercury, and it's the ruler of Aquarius. So this very positive trine is actually about developing new thinking patterns, new perspectives, and I actually believe this is going to be a lot about understanding our neural networks and the power of our mind, the power of our thoughts, the power of our speech in a much bigger way than we have before. The issue with Gemini is that because it's mutable air, imagine that you're shining a beam of light through a prism. The light then splits into lots of different directions. So it's extremely creative, but it can get scattered. It can get distracted very, very easily, you know, a little bit over here, a little bit over there. So I think we have to be very aware of that with so many planets, 5 planets in Gemini. And the antidote to that, I think, is either exercise, getting into your body and out of so much mental energy, and also dropping into stillness, which I talk about a great deal. And that can simply be closing your eyes, watching your breath, 100% focus on your breath, just letting the breath breathe you. Just total focus on the breath. You'll notice the breath slows and deepens in quite a short space of time, and just become the breath. And the reason that may be particularly appropriate now is because Gemini rules the lungs. Gemini rules the lungs. It also rules the hands. So if you can learn to focus your energy by doing something like pottery, using your hands but having a one-point focus, or tapestry, sewing, crochet, that kind of thing where you're using your hands, Gemini, but you have to focus, that can get you out of the scattering so much. But Jupiter in Gemini for the next 12 months can teach us about the wisdom of our thoughts in a bigger way, perhaps, than we've known before. Now, it's very interesting that Gemini energy is actually very non-conformist. Doesn't like to really, although there's a lot of communication and connection, because of its sense of objectivity and detachment, it likes to stand back a little way. It's a great people watcher. Doesn't like to be fully involved, likes to be one step back. And that means that it actually is quite non-conformist. Aquarius is highly, highly non-conformist. And there's quite a big theme here about that sense of non-conformism, because we have Black Moon Lilith here at 15 degrees of Libra. This is the true position of Black Moon Lilith, by the way, for astrologers. There's a mean position, a true position. And this is in a very tight trine to the new moon, 16 of Gemini. And Black Moon Lilith, you may remember from the myth, she's very much about the instinctive feminine. She's wild. She would not submit to Adam in the Garden of Eden. And so she was actually thrown out of the Garden of Eden because she stood in her truth. She stood in her sovereignty. I am not going to submit. And so this is very interesting because it reinforces Pluto in Aquarius, not going to conform, be the maverick, all that Gemini energy, not going to conform. And also we have Mars energizing Eris here. Also female warrior energy, sister of Mars, the one who wasn't invited to the wedding, you might remember, at Mount Olympus. So she turned up anyway and created mayhem by throwing a golden apple into the group of goddesses and saying, "For the fairest," and they all scrapped and fought, and that was said to lead to the Trojan War. But she's, again, like Black Moon Lilith, strong warrior energy, stands in her truth, stands in her sovereignty, will not tolerate untruth, any lack of truth, any lack of justice. She demands total social inclusion because she was not herself included. Nobody excluded. So, there's some interesting themes coming through very strongly at this new moon. And as we know, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for the next 20 years till 2044. And that is going to be raising issues around freedom, truth, human rights, civil rights, all of those things. So, yeah, very, very interesting. And also with Chiron conjunct Eris here, This is about where we felt wounded in our exclusion, in our social exclusion. We were made to feel different. We may have had different points of view. Remember, Chiron is also about the maverick as well, the one who doesn't fit. Woundedness through exclusion. You know, so that we've got some really strong parallels here. So, but yes, I do believe in these coming years we are going to learn a huge amount, particularly because Pluto is in Aquarius, about neural networks, our thinking processes, how they affect our reality. As you know, that's something I'm very, very interested in, and how we have to really, to get sovereignty, to experience our sovereignty, we have to achieve mastery over our thinking. Because this is going to go two ways, as I've talked about. This can be controlled by technology. We can see where that's going. Sedna is going to increase that probability. Sedna just moved into Gemini on the 27th of April. One of the strong themes of Sedna in Gemini is the development of AI. Sedna is trine to Pluto, both in air signs. This is really going to accelerate AI, which is going at exponential rate. All kinds of new technology, healing technologies, medical technologies, science, engineering, aviation. There are going to be so many things. I mean, just as an example, remember that Sedna has an 11,400 year cycle. So isn't it interesting, within a couple of weeks of Sedna entering Gemini, and this was on the 14th of Gemini, Google developed a new iteration of their AI device called Gemini, surprisingly called Gemini. And this, what it does is offer massive, Jupiter expands, data processing. Gemini, massive data processing. That's a literal translation of Jupiter in Gemini. So it's this kind of thing, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini, we're going to see many, many versions of this kind of thing, that to take the slog and the human labor out of processing. Now, that has huge social implications for work, what we do for work, if we're not working, what we do, and how we're going to restructure society based on that. I mean, huge, huge implications. But I was writing about that, 10 years ago, because you can see that very clearly coming down the track. So strongly recommend at this time doing breath work. Not just watching your breath, but doing breath work. There are many forms of that: yoga breath work, Wim Hof, Buteyko breath work. I do a kind of combination of those called Soma breath, SOMA breath. And that's kind of a non-negotiable part of my day as well. Strong breath work, because that really helps you to put your focus in your center. If we are to develop a sense of sovereignty, we must come from our center. Now, something else, and by the way, with breath work, with stillness, with the focus to avoid the scattering and the distraction, mindfulness, and developing a sense of spaciousness will be hugely helpful. So having a mindfulness practice, breath work can do it, but having a sense of, we welcome in an expanded consciousness of love, and getting into that sense of expanded consciousness will create that sense of spaciousness, which is also the antidote to the mental overwhelm and the scattering. So really try and discipline yourself from falling down that scroll hole, because I think social media could be very addictive at this time over the next 12 months. Particularly, it's going to be so much amazing information coming at us, new truths, new drama, collapse of the old world. I mean, it's just going to keep on coming. It's, it's the biggest movie in town. Now, something else that Gemini is known for, it is par excellence, the sign connected to choice. And it's very helpful as you move through your day to just change your wording and your thinking so it isn't, oh gosh, I've got to get up now. I choose to get up now. I'm going to have a cup of tea. I choose to have a cup of tea. So just, it takes it from a sense of kind of sluggishness or the day running you, the daily scheduling running you, to I'm choosing to do it. You're stepping into your power a little more. Now, something I mentioned a few years ago, and I really want to mention it again, because for me it was actually quite life-changing, and this is a life-changing book. This comes from a lady called Dr. Edith Eger. Dr. Edith Eger. She wrote a book called The Choice. I hope you can see that. And this is a true story of when she was captured and taken at the age of 16 with her sister to Auschwitz. I think she's still alive. She's in her 90s now. She has a website. I believe she's still alive. She became a psychologist ultimately. But her parents were gassed on day one. And she, for the duration of the war, experienced some absolute horrors. And she was finally, at the end of the war, a soldier spotted her in a pile of dead bodies, and he noticed her moving slightly. I mean, just beyond imagination, isn't it, how we can do these things? And he pulled her out of the pile, and she had a broken back at that point. But she had incredible courage and strength. And her book is called The Choice because even in that horror, she chose joy. In moments when she could steal a bit of extra bread and share it with her sister or the other people at the camp, she would deliberately choose joy. And it's deeply poignant. I mean, it brought me to tears many times, but it really was life-changing for me. So she teaches us to find joy amidst the horror. And I really want to put a big caveat on this, because I know if you're going through big bereavement, grief because you've lost someone, or you're going through a marriage breakup, or anything that's really major in your life, you have to allow that grief process to take place. You have to honor it. You can't just kind of skim over it. And you may need professional help to get through that, but you have to honor that process. But here I'm talking about, in general, if we're not in that extreme situation. So take what resonates from what I'm saying here, and just discard the rest. But I think sometimes people think when I'm talking about joy that I'm in complete denial of what's going on, and believe me, I'm not. Believe me, I'm very well aware of what's going on. But with Dr. Edith Eger, she refused to go into despair and depression because it was one of the few forms of protest she had against the oppression. And I choose to do the same. Because if you go into despair and depression, you're not helping the people on the ground and in the war zone in any way. You're not helping the collective. You're actually taking the frequency of the collective down. And I do believe we have a spiritual responsibility. So I choose as best I'm able, because people living in war zones, it's much harder for them in their, absolute horror of survival day to day, to be able to choose joy. So we who have an easier day-to-day life must do it for them. We must bear the, take on joy as a spiritual responsibility to help the collective, to help shift consciousness so we get to the point where war and horror and what we've done to people is unthinkable. That's my extremely strong view. So I just wanted to be clear on that, this isn't a question of skimming over. It's a question of deep awareness of the horror and saying, I'm not going to do that, because despair and depression are encouraged. And I know you'll understand me. So I'd just like to quote from Dr. Edith Eger here, who said, "You can't change what happened, what you did, or what was done to you, but you can change how you live now. My precious, you can choose to be free." And I think that is absolutely remarkable, considering what she went through. I think another thought here on choice is, when you're going through something quite tough, or actually just in general, if you can reframe it, and again, take what resonates here, but if you can reframe it to say, I'm going to live this as if I had chosen it. I'm going to live this as if I had chosen it. And, I know myself in my marriage breakup, or, going through many, many years of illness, and the astrology helped me enormously with this. It reframes it. It reframes it in terms of, okay, what's the lesson here? What's the meaning in this experience, and what's the lesson? And then if you can reframe it to, I'm living this as if I had chosen it, you again move it from a process of suffering to a process of empowerment. Because you're living it with meaning, you're understanding the lesson, you're probably moving through it faster too. So I hope those things are helpful for you. The other thing I'd like to say really about all of this that we're going to learn with, neural networks and the power of our mind and the power of our thinking, I just think this is going to be huge, is I think our language around astrology is going to have to change quite dramatically too, because I think Gemini and Aquarius are going to start to represent our multidimensionality. It isn't just going to be about communication and social media platforms. It's going to be about our multidimensionality. And we're going to have to develop a whole new octave, a whole new level of language around it to accommodate humanity's evolution. And I feel that very strongly, actually. I feel, in some ways I'm dealing with limited language when I'm preparing for these updates, but a lot more to come on that. Other things to point out here: Uranus in Taurus is trying to Ceres at 20 of Capricorn, and Ceres is also in a square to Eris, and a little bit wide on Mars, but certainly in a square to Eris. And so certainly farming, food production is going to continue to be under the microscope. I think the protests, Eris, going to continue around this. They're all over America, UK, Europe, and I am with the farmers on this. No farmers, no food. That's really clear. But we are going to see a great deal of innovation in food production. And I don't just mean lab grown, I mean natural organic ways that we do this, Uranus in Taurus. And a lot of it actually will come from local networks, getting together with your friendship groups locally, your neighbors, and agreeing who will grow what so you can share vegetables and fruit, etc. I think this local grassroots, almost like the war days when they did this, these local grassroots communities are going to come together much more strongly. And this is a beautiful aspect, I think, of Gemini. and Aquarius too. Something to watch with Ceres is she was in that very tight conjunction of Saturn and Pluto that happened at 22 degrees of Capricorn on the 12th of January 2020, which started the whole pandemic. And Ceres is the goddess of grains, harvest. She's very connected to nurturing. It's going to be very interesting because she was tangled up in that Saturn-Pluto abuse of power that started in 2020 that has actually acted as a massive catalyst for a huge amount of humanity's evolution. I know it's had a lot of tragedy along the way, but Ceres is moving back to that 22 degrees of Capricorn, where it was at the beginning of 2020, as we move into the later months of this year, particularly around October, November, which are going to be incredibly powerful months, particularly for America, not only because of the election, but how all of that is aspecting America's chart. So I will look at that in a separate video another day further down the road. But Ceres is one to watch in terms of everything to do with the earth, nature, food growing. A couple of other things to point out. Saturn is square to this new moon and Venus here. And this is very interesting because I think this is giving some reality, Saturn, to our new ideas, our new thinking, our new perspectives that is rooted in science, Saturn, and spirituality, Pisces. One of the main themes of Saturn moving through Pisces is that we're bringing science and spirituality together, and I absolutely love that. So many scientists are now bringing spirituality into their discourse, and equally the other way. Spiritual people are bringing science in. Just great. That's what I love to do as well. But it's giving a kind of reality check and some kind of, is this for the long term? Will this last? To the new ideas that are going to be birthed at this new moon. The other thing which I love to talk about is the dwarf planets. And there's a wonderful dwarf planet called Altgira, which I haven't talked about for some time, at 19 of Gemini, 1909 of Gemini, conjunct this new moon. Now, Altgira has a 293-year orbit. The dwarf planets have around about a 300-year orbit. And he was the Aboriginal god of dream time, very connected to the Aboriginal people, the big dreaming. And, beautiful. So many of these dwarf planets were creator gods. Higher octave of consciousness for us. And the dreaming, as they call it, they see as energy from which our physical world is formed, the invisible energy from which we manifest. And they had a very clear understanding of that, way better than we do as modern people, actually. And it gave them a very clear worldview. So they walk the song lines. They walk the song lines to manifest. And they had incredible knowledge, and still do, Indigenous people in general. This is particularly related to the Aboriginal people, of the earth, of nature, of natural cycles, of astronomy, of natural medicine, of plants, of animals, of ecology, of genealogy. And it was all passed down by speech and song. Gemini, passed down by speech and song. And so they had massive areas in their neural networks, again, we're back to that held this information because it's passed down through generations. So, it wasn't that it was lodged on the memory drive of your computer. We have quite minimal memory now as human beings compared to the Indigenous people and the Aboriginal people, because everything was held in speech and song. So, I think there's some very interesting lessons for us here. And the dwarf planets remind us that the indigenous people saw everything, or see everything, present tense, as alive, full of life force, all of the cosmos as one flow, a oneness, a web of life. And this new moon is a rebirth of this ancient knowledge. And this is popping up in all kinds of ways in the physics, in the cosmology, the astrology, as I speak about very frequently. So, yes, let's turn now to Sedna. Every astrologer is going to be talking about Sedna for another 40 years because she stays there in Gemini till 2067. But we have a very interesting finger of God, finger of fate, sort of, it's a sense of destiny, a yod from Sedna. I don't know if you can see this dotted green line here, to Homer, and also picking up Neptune at 29 of Pisces. Now, my good friend Heather Ensworth and I are going to have a discussion about Neptune at 29 of Pisces next month in June. So I'll leave a lot of what I'm going to be saying to that until that video. But with a yod, it's essentially a long, skinny triangle where you have two planets at the base, which are in sextile to each other. And with all 3 points, you have to use a very tight orb, just a 2-degree orb either way. It'd be easier to see if Neptune has already tipped into 0 of Aries, which it's going to do next year. But so this is the base. And with a yod, you have to incorporate the archetypes, the symbolism of those two base planets with the planet of destiny, as it were, which is at the pointy end. So if you have those in your birth chart, that's what it's all about. So the planet at the pointy end, here this is Homer at 0 of Scorpio, and this is going to be an ongoing yod for certainly the rest of this year and next. This is the planet that's highlighted as the planet of destiny. So what is this about? Well, I've talked about Sedna's, one of the big themes being not just the transformation, but the metamorphosis for humanity. It's also, of course, trine to Pluto transformation, as I've mentioned. This whole shift into more of the light body, more crystalline, with all that comes with that, we'll eat less, we'll eat more lightly, we'll eat probably more plant-based, we'll have better sense of connection with nature, all of the things I've spoken about at length. Talked about Neptune being this sense of malleability of our reality, particularly at the very last degree of the zodiac. Neptune is connected to the invisible and the ethereal anyway. At the last degree of the zodiac, I think in Pisces, it's very connected to our connection to source, oneness, spirituality. That they are feeding into one of the strongest archetypes we have for New Earth, Homer. This regenerative principle. In her fire goddess aspect, she birthed the 8 islands of Hawaii. She's very linked to community and collaboration. She's very linked to creativity and regeneration of the earth, as I've spoken about many, many times. So this is a very exciting finger of God, finger of fate, which, as I say, is going to be ongoing this year and next. And I see Neptune in this very last degree of the zodiac as not the end of the world, but the end, certainly, of a world. A dissolution of the illusion, the veil, waking up from the old dream, and consciously choosing Gemini to create a real dream with New Earth. With the death of the old world, very last degree of the zodiac, that contains the seed, the beginnings of New Earth, which is already here in terms of frequency. And so, yes, this really is is a spectacular time for where we are headed as a humanity. And so step into that excitement. Try and really feel what the indigenous people feel, the Aboriginal people feel with Altjira. And I'll just stop sharing here, because the Aboriginal people, going back to songlines and dream time, they believe in two forms of time, quoting here from Wikipedia, two parallel streams of reality. One is the daily objective activity, reality. The other is an infinite spiritual cycle called the dream time, more real than reality itself, which is just beautiful. And whatever they believe, whatever happens in dream time establishes the values, the symbols, the foundation of the actual day-to-day society. So that's really beautiful. So with all this Gemini energy, I would really try to be much more conscious in your choices day to day. Psychologists tell us that 97% of our thinking is unconscious day to day. We just roll on with the same thoughts as the day before and the day before and the day before. Try and make your choices much more conscious. Again, use post-it notes around the house. What are you thinking? What's your focus? Where's your attention going? People recently have been asking me, this is taking a long time, and when is our reality going to change? Well, it's going to change longer for the collective reality to change than your own individual reality. But you can change your own individual reality, I believe, really quite quickly. But what you have to do is feel the energy within yourself of what you want to experience in your outer reality. If you want to experience freedom, you have to feel it within yourself. Experience peace, experience it as a feeling within yourself. Use that infinity wave that Hope Fitzgerald told us all about. And once you get that energy really inside yourself, it actually happens incredibly quickly in your day-to-day personal reality. Do it as a game, as I often say. But I have many rolling mantras on my morning walks. And one of them is, I live in love, joy, bliss, and freedom. I live in love, joy, bliss, and freedom. And I emphasize those things because those are things I value incredibly highly, because I know if I didn't have them, boy, would I miss them. And again, remember, they are all feeding back to the collective to help us shift the collective to a point where all of us are living in freedom, joy, bliss, and love. So I really hope that's helped you. Quite a lot in there again today, and so much going on for us. There's so much learning happening. We're going to have to see so many solutions coming online, and I'm going to be referring to some of those in videos as we go forward. So really hope that's helped you. Don't forget to set a new intention, plant a new seed at this new moon in Gemini. Thank you so much for listening. God bless. Bye for now.